Hi guys, welcome to Art Talk with April, Season 3. I'm April Harris of Inked April, located in Birmingham, Alabama. We have some wonderfully inspiring artists on this season. Let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to Art Talk with April. Today we have Jeane Vogel. She is a tapestry, fiber, photography artist. It is so good to get to talk to you. And you are located in Missouri, correct?
In St. Louis, yes.
St. Louis. All right. Well, how did you get started in art?
You know, I think like a lot of artists, I started as a kid. And also like a lot of artists, I had family members who said, "That's so great. You're so cool. You can't make a living like that."
Yeah.
So, I grew up in the 60s and I actually had I had parents who thought I really could be anything. I was the oldest child, and my dad was studying to be a lawyer when I was growing up, and I was interested in what he was doing. And he's like, "Okay, well, you can be a lawyer too." So I was groomed from the time I was maybe 8 or 9, 10 years old to be a lawyer. But
Wow.
also, I was always writing stories. I was drawing stuff. I was taking pictures. My dad had been in Germany during the Berlin Wall crisis in 1961, and there really wasn't a whole lot for him to do while he was there. They would just, made sure nobody shot at each other. So he bought cameras, and he brought home one of the cameras. And when I was about 10 or 11, he let me start using one of his good German cameras, which was really wonderful. So I started doing that. At the same time, I was really interested in drawing, and I had this idea I could be a great artist. So anybody my age will remember the little ads on the back of comic books, like, "Draw this mouse."
Yeah.
So I drew that mouse and I sent it in, unbeknownst to my parents, until they get a telephone call saying, "Oh, she's brilliant. She needs to be enrolled in our school," which is really what it was all about. But I didn't know that. I just knew how to address an envelope and lick a stamp, because we licked stamps back then. In case anybody doesn't know, we used to lick stamps. And there was this tumult in my house. I mean, how could you dare turn this in? You can't be an artist. Don't be ridiculous. We'll never do. I mean, it was a huge deal. I just remember all this yelling and screaming.
Oh, no.
I think my parents had, 2 pennies to rub together maybe once a week. I mean, there was no way they were going to pay for art classes. So that was, and I think a lot of people have those experiences. Art's a wonderful thing, but you do it as a hobby. You don't do it as a professional. So, went to school, did all the things that I normally do, became a journalist, didn't love journalism, and really started getting back into photography in my 20s. And that's when I started doing shows. This was back when art fairs literally we'd put our art hanging on fences.
Wow.
We didn't have tents. There were a bunch of people on the street, and we'd hang up the art on the fence, and people would buy it. And it was so unprofessional, but people bought stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
that was back in the early 80s. Then it just grew. I mean, at a certain point, you realize this is what I'm meant to do. And if, it's said that way of writers too. If you are an artist or a writer, if you need to do it, you're going to do it no matter what. It's a compulsion. It's a need, and you do it. And it doesn't really matter what ends up happening with it. It's something you have to do. And if it's good enough, it can get out in the world. So I was fortunate enough to be considered good enough that I could get my work out in the world. So I did art fairs for a long time in photography, alternate process photography, which basically means historical photography. And then and I'd always worked in fiber. Oh, so I had a really great influence in my grandmother, my maternal mother, who was an artist. And she didn't become an artist until she was widowed in her 50s. She taught me a lot. She also taught me a lot of fiber stuff. She taught me how to do embroidery as a little girl. That's what we did in the early 60s. We were little people, and we embroidered our little pillow slips. Can you imagine embroidered pillow slips?
Okay, now I've been learning embroidery lately, so you know.
It was wonderful. I do a lot of it. It's really wonderful. But it was a gentle art. That was one of the things we did. I always knew how to knit. I could crochet a little bit. There's not a fiber thing I haven't tried. I don't do them all, and I don't do them all well. But about 8 or 9 years ago, I started really getting into spinning yarn because I thought, well, this is something that seems kind of interesting. So once you go down that fiber rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I started doing a little bit of cloth weaving, not very much, just a little bit. I'd done that for years. But you start going down that fiber rabbit hole, and suddenly you're buying spinning wheels, and then you're buying looms, and then you're buying more looms, and then you're buying tapestry looms, and you're buying this, then you're dyeing your wool. It's just, it takes over. So I was really interested in tapestry. So most people have misunderstandings about what tapestry is. It's not needlepoint. It's really a weaving. And I describe it often as, if you think about what like a Mexican rug or a Navajo rug looks like, that's more like what a tapestry is. It's kind of a picture.
Yeah.
It's with wool, but it's not, the weft doesn't go all the way across back and forth in most part. It's called discontinuous weft, which is another one of those words that'll make people afraid. But so it's a way of creating a cloth that's heavy and decorative.
Yeah.
And it can also be on the floor. I mean, I've woven rugs that can, you can actually step on and walk on it, it'll be okay. They're really sturdy.
Yeah.
But when I started doing that, and I was taking some classes and studying with people, reading everything I could read, I realized I really sucked at it. And, here's something that happens to people. And so I was in my mid-50s when that happened. And I was a professional artist. I was doing art fairs. I was selling my art. I was doing exhibits. People knew me as a pretty well-known photographer in the area. And all of a sudden, I just couldn't do this competently. I mean, I just couldn't do it. It's like, what is wrong with me? I'm used to being a competent artist, and all of a sudden I'm producing this crap. It's like, what is this?
Oh my goodness.
One of two things happens when artists change medium, which is really what I was doing. I was changing a medium.
Yeah.
And one of two things happens. You either quit or you double down. So I doubled down. Like anything, it's how much time you put in and how much work you put in, and how much practice you put in. I mean, sometimes we suck at stuff. So I just kept working at it until I felt like I didn't suck at it anymore.
Yeah.
Other people thought I didn't suck at it anymore. So that's a really long answer to how did I get started.
Oh, it's a wonderful.
So our time is up. I know.
Oh my gosh. That is so interesting. And I love how you put that once you got going down that rabbit hole, you just start doing all these things and try this and start trying this and experimenting with this.
Right.
How did you come about like your particular vision and the way that you're creating?
It's a mystery.
Well, that was a much shorter answer.
So there are a lot of influences in our lives. I mean, I am especially influenced by feminism. I'm especially influenced by culture. I'm especially influenced by the things that are going on around me. So a lot of my work is in response to what's happening. I think anytime artists create art rather than just creating a really pretty picture, which has lots of value in our world too. We need pretty pictures. But sometimes art is really a response to what's happening around us, or we're trying to figure out what's happening around us, or we're trying to answer a question.
Yeah.
Like, what's happening? Why is this happening? So how can I respond to it? So, I mean, I really look at art, all kinds of art as communication. It's a manifestation of an idea. You're trying to figure out what's happening in the world, and you create something that maybe represents it, maybe asks some more questions, maybe triggers memories in people or triggers other ideas. I mean, it's just such a great conversation among people. So my really early influences was the Navajo rugs and their weaving. I was exposed to it as a kid on a family trip out west, and I just fell in love with that kind of weaving. Now, I would never reproduce Navajo designs. I mean, those are different kind of designs. But what we can do is learn the techniques and learn how people do things, and then use that to express our own ideas. And I'm so incredibly grateful to the artists who have taught me. There's some women in Gallup, New Mexico, who are just fabulous, amazing.
Wow.
So I'm really grateful that they share their knowledge, because it completely changed the way I looked at tapestry, which is, we can go on for that for hours, and they really should talk about that rather than me talking about that. But it has influenced my work.
Yeah.
And like I said, whatever's happening around me in the world, this is a lot. And I also like trying different things. I like trying, combining things. It's like some of the work that I'm doing is cyanotypes, which is the oldest form of what photography. It dates to the 1840s. And a lot of people know them as sun prints. You probably did them in summer camp. So you have some coated paper, and you put a leaf on top of it, and you expose it to the sun, and you wash it in water, and then you've got a print. Well, that was the very first kind of photography. And I've been doing some of that with digital negatives. That I create a digital negative, and it's a contact print. So the negative goes right on top of the fiber. I'm using fiber paper. Put a piece of glass on top of it so that the negative doesn't blow away. Expose it to the sun, anywhere from 5 minutes to 2 hours, depending on what time of year it is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, that January sun does not work very long.
And that's vacation time.
I don't do that much in the winter, but it can take long. Normally I'm out in the sun in August or July, and I'm sweating and I'm watching everything bubble up. Like, we're gonna get that back inside. So then I take those fibers, and then I stitch them with a traditional sachiko, which is a Japanese embroidery technique.
Wow.
So I really like kind of combining things and learning about how something was used, and then how can we use it in modernity.
Wow.
Because, the cyanotypes come from the 19th century. The sashiko comes from the 17th century Japan. Well, let's see what they look like when they combine together.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we understand the history of them and the traditions of them before we use them in our own art.
That's fascinating that you've put together such different types of, like different time periods, different cultures together to create something.
Well, there's symbols and techniques that we've been using, for, we don't even know how long. The oldest piece of fiber that we can find is maybe 9,000 years old. Well, if they did it that well 9,000 years ago, maybe they were doing it even better 20,000 years ago, but we just don't have a piece of it. So that's one of the things I really like about fiber and weaving, is it connects all of the cultures around the world. It connects humanity all around the world. And mostly it connects women. It connects the generations of women, because this was something that women normally did. We've always been responsible for clothing our family.
Yeah. And that is so true. I've never actually thought about that. Like, how pretty much throughout, all of humanity and all the different cultures, that the women would have been creating things with fabrics and sewing and all kinds of things like that.
Weaving all sorts of materials. Every culture weaves something.
Yeah.
Every culture has been able to figure out how to take a piece of fiber, of grass or reed or animal hair, and twist it or move it, manipulate it some way so that it creates something else. And that's what I think is so important about craft today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes your work even more meaningful, that you're taking something from various cultures, but in itself, I mean, it's a human practice, right? It's something that,
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
you know,
absolutely human practice. Yeah, I would not want to ever appropriate specific ideas or symbols from
sure.
other cultures. I use those from my own culture. But
Mm,
we share a lot of cultures. I mean, the piece that I've got
yeah,
behind me is the most recent piece that I've just done. It shows the Hamsa, which is a
yeah.
Jewish or Muslim symbol. A lot of people know it as the hand of God. In Islam, it's called the hand of Fatima. But it represents blessings or protection.
Oh,
So in Judaism, if the hand is pointed down, it represents blessings. If the hand is pointed up, it represents a protection or a stop sign. And this
wow.
piece behind me is called Three Protections and a Warning. And it's a COVID piece. It was deliberately a COVID piece. But the hand is one of those symbols that's so universal. And it also contains a spiral. So a spiral is also a really universal symbol across geography and across time. And
Yeah,
trying to pull those things back together is my way of trying to communicate about the universality of humanity.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think when you were talking about that, I was thinking about actually cave paintings,
Yeah,
and how they would just
that's the
make
first
a
thing. That's the first thing. I absolutely. But you'll see it everywhere. I mean, no matter what continent you go to, where humans have been, and we still see evidence of human existence. You'll either
yeah.
see footprints in the sand, or you'll see hands on the walls. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about your COVID series that you've been working on these past
Yeah.
few years.
Years. That's pretty much all I've been doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I still
It seems
have
like it's been like maybe a year, but it's longer than that.
I had this small new little loom and I created a piece on it. It was just kind of a piece I was working on. And sometimes work just creates itself.
Yeah.
And it was in March, right after the shutdown, maybe, or as we were shutting down.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to express what I was feeling at the time. It was a throwaway piece. It wasn't a throwaway piece, but it was just something I was doing. It wasn't created for some purpose. I wasn't working on a show. I wasn't working on a body of work.
Sure.
Because I've got an ego. I put it on Instagram. And I explained what I thought it was, and people really responded to it. It's like, oh, well, that's interesting. And then as I started sketching, because I try to do sketching regularly. I don't do it incredibly well, but it's one way of getting ideas down. And
Yeah.
every sketch came up a COVID piece. So I wove another COVID piece, and then I wove another COVID piece. And I think I have 18 or 19 pieces done now over the last 3 years. And each piece started representing what was happening at the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a narrative of the 3 years. It's more of a conceptual narrative. And I think it's still kind of happening. But I'm trying to bring it to a close because I'm trying to move on to this. But they keep coming up. I was like,
Yeah.
that's just what happens when you work in series of work. But for the last year, I have been trying to get I've been submitting it to shows. I mean, individual pieces have been in exhibits a lot. And one piece actually won the top award, which I was just so grateful for.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's always nice when they give you an award. It's even nicer when it comes with a nice check. Thank you very much, organizations, for realizing we really appreciate these things. Um, this is a tough way to make a living. And I submit these proposals, and proposals they get hundreds and hundreds of proposals. So Quad Cities Art Center just informed me last week that they accepted the COVID series for a solo show
Oh, wonderful.
this year. So that's in Rock Island, Illinois. Quad Cities up in Western Illinois, Eastern Iowa. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
I get it all framed to get it ready, and maybe make another piece or two for it. But I'm excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome. So I love that you talked about a couple of things there. Do you typically work in series?
Yes. Yeah, I have always worked in series. Partly because I think it's easier to work in a series because you get one idea and it just adds to the next idea, and each one kind of moves it along. I've got a lot of series in process. I always have a lot of different series in process. But yeah, I think it's always helpful to create that cohesive body of work often that artists that jurors are looking for. I talk to new artists all the time, and their work is all over the place. It's like you've got to come up with having all over the place is really good because that's where you can figure out where your vision is.
Yeah.
But once you see something, you need to not duplicate it, but then it's also easy just to kind of get stuck and just keep doing the same work over and over again. You don't want to do that either. So
yeah. So do you typically try to, when you're doing your series, are you I'm just kind of spitballing what I think it would be like. You are inspired by something that's going on in the world. You're thinking, I want to make a piece about this. And then you go ahead and really kind of do a deep dive exploration kind of thing of that subject. When does the series end?
that would be a really good way to work. No. Yeah, I mean, I think that happens probably in a much more informal way. But yeah, I'm one of those people who like doing research. So if something occurs to me, I will try to find out more about it. And that just always adds to more idea. I mean, working every day leads to more ideas all the time. People say, where does your inspiration come from? It's like, well, because I'm working every day. I mean, I'm working every day, and that's what you have to do. Whether you're doing it professionally or not, if you're serious about it, that's what you have to do. So, where does the series end? Yeah, I think it has natural beginnings and natural ends. So,
yeah, kind of when you feel like, okay, this series is done. I'm good with this.
Or if the work coming out isn't as, is mediocre. It's not as good as I want it to be. It's like, oh, maybe I have this one's run its course. With COVID, I just want COVID to be over. Want it over.
Oh, we all.
I had a reception last week, or no, 2 days ago, last week. And it was the first time I was in a group of people without my mask on, and it was really a little freakish, but I just decided I had this magical cone of protection that was going to take care of me while I was talking to patrons, because I wanted to make sure that, we could have good conversations. And it's hard to be in a group of 30 people and we're all wearing masks, we're trying to talk and nobody can understand. And
what I wanted to point out about that too is that you're sending out a proposal to different galleries. Like, how are you going about doing that? Like, what advice would you give to someone who is interested in going that direction?
Sure. So, I think it's really important first to have people disagree about this, but I think really it's important to get your work out into group exhibits just to see if the work is good. I mean, not everybody will like it, and you get rejections all the time. Everybody gets rejections.
Yeah.
I think it's important just to find out where the work is landing with people. And then when it does land with people, you can find out, you can go to the exhibit itself and talk to people and see what they respond to and what they don't respond to. So then you have an idea and some confidence to go to a gallery and respond to their RFPs, their requests for proposals. I normally go to nonprofit galleries because I'm kind of a nonprofit person and I like supporting the nonprofit art centers. So that's generally where I go. There are also private galleries that'll work in different ways. But most, university galleries, nonprofit galleries will accept proposals and they have guidelines.
Yeah.
So the first thing to do is find out if your work fits in with the kind of work that they do, that they exhibit. So everybody's got website. I mean, this kind of research is really easy now. Can I tell you, but it was not easy. You had to go to the gallery and talk to people. Now we can just Google it. That's fine. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for being that spoiled, because that was, we used to have people who are younger artists don't realize that when we were applying for shows or exhibits, before maybe 2005, we had to send slides to people in the mail. We sent slides, and then they would send them back to us. And it was through the mail. It was awful.
It's just getting slides made, and then,
photographing your work to make sure you get it. No, it was a huge industry, and we don't have to say we're so grateful. Anyway, but I mean, just you never want to cold call a gallery. You never want to walk into a gallery and say, I am a great artist, or I'm a lousy artist, or I'm a beauty, or whatever, and you should have my work. I mean, you just really need to find out who they are, what kind of work that they have, and look at their proposals, and you apply to them. You've got to follow the rules. And everybody has different requirements, but you just have to read what they say and follow the rules. I was an executive director for a while of a nonprofit art gallery, a community art gallery, and can I tell you how many artists don't bother to read the rules?
Yeah.
And if you want to tick off a director, you just kind of ignore the rules, because they're just going to toss your stuff away. So the most important thing is do what they ask.
Yeah.
And then you have really good images in a cohesive body of work. And make sure that you get some good crits on the work.
Yeah. That's excellent advice. I've often wondered, like, what the person who is taking these proposals are going through, and how many people are actually doing the things correctly, or even maybe know how.
Right. I mean, I think most people are, but there are other people who
they're just like, I'm going to send it. If they like it, they'll.
Exactly. They're not stubbornly saying this isn't important. They're just not realizing how important it is to actually do what they ask. That the images are at the right size, that the image file name is proper. I mean, those kind of things can knock somebody out of an exhibit so quickly, because that means that somebody has to do extra work.
Yeah.
Yours isn't the only one coming in. I mean, some exhibits get 1,200 submissions.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, younger artists,
follow the
rules, because that's just one stumbling block. If you could go with the flow, do what you're supposed to do,
and find out if your work, if you do nudes and it's a small family gallery with a lot of kids, they're probably not going to be interested in your nudes. Or if you do tribal photography and this center only has, fiber, well, they're not going to be interested in you either. Boy, wouldn't it be nice to have a center that just did fiber? But I mean, galleries and centers have different, very specific visions for themselves, and they want to show certain kinds of work, and your work just might not be part of it. So don't take rejection personally. It's not personal.
That's a huge one.
It is. I mean, it is huge. People, you just can't take it personally. You can be disappointed. You can say, well, who are these morons who don't like my work? Really? Well, I mean, they have, first of all, there's so many applications coming in, so they have to make decisions. And, unless you really messed it up, it's not about who you are.
Yeah, yeah.
If it's blind. If it's not blind, it might be about who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of discrimination still in the art world. So
sure. Some gatekeeping there. Yeah. So with your work, having a lot of feminist kind of messages, like, how do you, especially in this time where I feel like that is becoming a very important subject right now. There's a lot of powerful art about, women's rights and things like that. How do you navigate what it is you want to say toward something that's so, I guess, important right now? And then, there being a lot of other people who are thinking about that too.
Are we going to say the A word?
Oh, you say whatever you want.
No, I think that's a really important question because, feminist art pretty much, I don't want to say it started, but it became much more visible starting in the 70s.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that we did in the 70s and 80s that younger artists are doing again. So I'm hoping that younger artists kind of look at what their mothers and aunts and grandmothers did
Yeah.
in the past, so they don't have to recreate it. They can build on it. But I think it is really important because one of the things I think you're alluding to is reproductive freedom and abortion.
Sure.
This is definitely something we need to talk about. How can we talk about that without seeming reductive or by doing the same thing over and over again? And I think that's a really good question. I really don't know. I've been thinking a lot about that because it's a lot of the issues that I want to deal with as well. You don't want to be too stereotypical. You want to say something that has some meaning and some deep thought. So
yeah,
I think we have to respond the way we respond. And I don't know that a lot of people are doing what they want to be doing right now because we're just so afraid of what's happening in the political world.
Yeah.
But I have been seeing an awful lot of really wonderful art coming out of it. And I've got lots of sketches, but they're just not quite there for me yet. So, I mean, I did some years and years ago. And when abortion was safe and legal in this country.
Yeah.
It's not safe and legal in this country. Reproductive freedom is waning and in danger, and women's lives are in danger, which just scares the jeepers out of me. It really does. It's terrifying me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we think it's okay for women to die and not have and be forced to carry children. But there's so many other issues too. I mean, we've got serious issues with trans women being killed. We have serious issues with Indigenous women being killed. We have serious issues with Black women not being able to give birth without dying. I mean, it's just there's so much going on that we have to be able to respond to.
Sure.
So, yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but it's definitely in the back of my mind. I know it's a lot of artists are working on that.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we will continue to work on and bring into the world because, like I said, art is a communication.
Yeah, yeah. And on that point too, I in the past I've done a little bit of sort of political stuff when something was really, meaningful to me or whatever. But at the same time, how do you have, in your opinion, when you're going to speak to something so important through your work, at some point there's a line where, instead of being attacking or finding that sweet spot where you can have communication and a conversation without putting off people,
I don't know if we're gonna. I don't know how to do that. Years ago, in the 80s, I worked at Planned Parenthood. I was the director of public affairs for Planned Parenthood of the Greater St. Louis region. I don't think that was our name, but it was something like that. And I did a lot of lobbying.
Yeah.
And abortion was safe and legal, but we had people who were trying to whittle away at it, and parental consent laws, and there were the fake abortion clinics that were pulling women in, young women, and saying, we'll take care of you. And of course, they weren't taking care of us. We were working against those things. And I would go to Jefferson City, which is the capital in Missouri, which was hard for me to believe at this moment, but that was run by Democrats at the time. And,
Wow.
and I would go and lobby, and there would be a lobbyist from the pro-life group. And we had lunch together.
Yeah.
I mean, and this was a man, and we knew each other, and we could joke and as human beings, not joke about
Mhm.
the issue, but we could joke as human beings. We'd have lunch together. We could talk. We didn't vilify each other. And it's shocking to me that I had those experiences and that we used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I don't see us ever being able to do that again. I cannot imagine sitting down with somebody who so vehemently believes that my reproductive freedom and the reproductive freedoms of anybody with a uterus is not valuable. I don't know what to say to them. So when I kind of create work, I know I'm gonna piss some people off, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I learned a long time ago that how people respond to my work is how they respond to my work.
Mm.
That's not on me. That's not my responsibility. They respond to it the way they respond to it. Normally it's a good thing. And my work requires, I think everybody's work, not just mine, everybody's work requires that somebody else respond to it, because otherwise it's just going to sit in a drawer. I mean, it has to be there, and people have to respond to it. That's kind of the point of the work. And I guess it's how we create the work and what kind of a message we're trying to send. Sometimes my work hits people over the head, and sometimes it's really, really subtle. And I think I'm moving more toward more subtle work because I do want a civil conversation. Because I really think art can humanize us in a way that we've started to lose parts of our humanity.
Yeah.
So, really have. That's one of the things I think is so valuable about craft, and how important, not just making the art, but making sure it's crafted well, or that it's something that we use every day. Like this cup, we have things that are really wonderful to us that are made by a human hand, and we just don't have that very much anymore. We have things that are mass produced, so our humanity has been taken away from those objects. Well, we used to know the makers.
Yeah.
And we would respect the object because we respected the maker. The object was valuable because it was useful and it lasted. The bookshelf that grandpa made or great grandpa made, the quilt that grandma made. It's just we really valued those things, and they lasted a long time, and we weren't throwing things away. So I think if we can return to this idea of subtlety and craft and respecting the maker, and putting really beautiful objects into our everyday lives, then maybe we can also start to return to a little bit of that humanity. And maybe that can take us back to a time where we see each other as people, and then we can have some of these more difficult conversations.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a pretty big statement.
I know. I probably should have thought that through a little more carefully.
I just immediately feel like I'm thinking about the internet, just how it is so dehumanized, and you're not even looking at the artist on the other side of that computer or phone or whatever as a person, and people just say all kinds of things. Have you ever had anyone that had like such an adverse reaction to something you created that you were like, oh my gosh, I'm a human being,
I did art fairs for 25 years.
Oh, okay.
I was out there, with my little tent in the heat and the rain and the cold, whatever it was, and talking to the public.
Yeah.
And most of the art fairs I did, almost all the art fairs I did, was in photography, alternate process photography. So photography is not, there aren't a lot of women photographers on the art circuit. There's some, but not a lot. It's pretty male dominated. And, I've been doing it for a while. So I would have a lot of men, mansplain my work to me. I had one guy come up to me and read my artist statement and tell me it was wrong.
Oh no! Like, how could that be possible?
And I said, you mean do you think I don't believe it? Because the artist stated it. He just didn't like my take on what I thought photography was. And it's like, okay. I would have, so those are the kind of things that happened to me. I mean, it was generally men who were challenged by a woman. Some of them said, you didn't really take all these pictures. Who took these pictures for you?
Oh my God.
Oh, absolutely. I had people come up and say, did you go to all these places? It's like, no, I just, I have to say bad words on this, but I mean, really, I mean, it's kind of extraordinary how challenged men are by women. And you see that if you're working in the art world where there are a lot of men. And men are really threatened by us. I don't know what we could have possibly done except give birth to humanity. But other I can believe the human. What can you do?
Oh,
that's a joke, and I don't know, man. I love you, man. I'm married to a man. I gave birth to a man.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, that's a very good point that you're making there too. Like, I've seen a lot coming out about that, about their, like, the whole art world being so male dominated.
Well, white male dominated. Let's make sure.
Yeah.
Black men don't have any more opportunities than we have, I think. No, it is. You still look at the museums. It's, there might be 12% of women represented in museums. I mean, you'll see it you'll see it in art fairs. You'll see it. There are women. A lot of the women will be painters and jewelers, and men will be photographers and woodworkers and sculptors. And when there's a crossover, it can be very difficult for those people. And when they're just talking to the public, because you never know who's going to walk into your booth.
Sure.
So, I think it is tough. We're still not recognizing that art is still defined by the white European male concept of beauty or important. Wow. And we have to press against that.
Absolutely.
And we have to, I get that they're feeling threatened because they're losing their power. They don't have to lose their power. They just have to share their power.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of room for everybody, right? There doesn't have to be, and why wouldn't you want to have multiple voices and experiences being, shared with the world through art and that kind of thing? Because, I mean, even so, the more voices, the more unique voices that are out there, and the more experiences, the more art grows and develops and, metamorphoses into, something even better than.
The most important thing I ever learned from being on the art fair circuit for such a long time is no artist is my competition.
Yeah.
We do not compete with each other. I mean, there are people who get really jealous of each other. And, like, why are they getting all the sales? It's like, well, that's what people want right now.
Yeah.
You have to, nobody's taking away from me unless they're stealing from me, which has happened a couple of times. But there's always somebody out there who's like, oh, I'm going to copy that. That actually happened. There was an artist. Somebody came up to me and said, oh, you've got two booths. It's like, no, I just have this one. Well, somebody over there has your work too.
Oh, no.
They did. They had absolutely duplicated my work. And they were
wow. Oh, wow. I just couldn't imagine being in that spot, like realizing someone at the same show is.
That was a little weird, but I mean, it happened twice. We showed up at the same show twice.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Such different things, and our visions are different. And even if we're the same medium, we're going to have such different takes on it. And like you said, there's room enough for everybody. There really is room enough for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's only when commerce comes into play that we start thinking that, well, we need to get rid of this quote unquote competition.
Did you travel to like different states and things like that?
Oh yeah. At the height, I was doing 26 shows a year.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
For the most part, I mean, I was kind of making a living. I also was doing some other consulting for nonprofit groups. But, most artists have to have a job. I mean, it's hard to make a living as an artist. It's really hard. There are people who could do it, but you have to work every weekend and you have to travel a lot. And, I have seen climate change dramatically have an impact on the art fair market. Because there are summers, and the last couple of summers have been like this, where almost every weekend there's a show someplace in this country that's getting wiped out by bad weather.
Yeah.
And you have to be that way.
Absolutely. I hadn't even thought about that, I mean, I think about climate change a lot, but then all of the shows, all of the things that are happening, the events outdoors, oh my gosh.
Well,
and it's a livelihood.
Right, exactly. And your life.
Yeah, like that's what you do.
So you're in Alabama, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I've watched over the years how the tornadoes in the spring have moved from the St. Louis, from Kansas and Missouri, and they've dropped south.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have as much of them anymore as you guys have.
Yeah, our schools will close down. Everything closes down. We all, go into our safe places and stuff like that. And I mean, it's getting into the springtime when all of those art events are, normally out there. And you think about somebody who has probably planned, out these art shows that they're going to be at all this time.
Well, they've had to apply to them and be accepted to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're, maybe they've been doing that same show for the last 5-10 years, and it's one of their most important ones, and they're just wiped out,
Well, I can tell you on any given weekend, there are artists driving home trying to figure out how they're going to pay their mortgage that week or that month because they didn't make what they needed to make. I mean, it's happened to all of us. I mean, the most terrifying experience for me was it was right during the Great Recession, which was so awful for so many of us. And I did a show that I normally did $5,000-$6,000 at. And so, when times are tough and when money's tight, you're figuring out how much money you need for the month. And you need to figure out how much you need to sell. And expensive, it's probably costing you $1,000 to do the show, and you got to watch that much work walk out of your booth. And then you're thinking, how can I make sure I pay all these bills? Okay, we've got to make this much money. Okay, normally make this much of the show, I'll be okay. So going home from that show, I made $45 at that show.
Oh my gosh.
Terrible show. The weather was terrible. People just didn't come out. We were closed a lot of the time. And, you're just going, what am I going to do next? And that's what's happening with a lot of art fair artists every weekend.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely say to art fair goers, please stop asking for discounts.
Oh gosh.
You not in there with your product your bag and ask for a discount. These people are just eking out, and they don't realize that the tent costs money, the booth space costs money, the travel costs money. I mean, they're laying out some money just to be there if they're not a local artist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to get a space at an art fair, it generally costs $350 to $600 just to be there.
Yeah.
So buy stuff from art fair artists. I'm not doing art fairs anymore, so this is not self-service. Buy from art fair artists. Get to know the work. Find out what kind of a really wonderful piece that you need to have for your home. And don't walk in and tell people that your walls are all filled up and you're just there for entertainment.
So where all can people find your work?
Okay, I've got a couple of websites. I've got an art website, which is vogelpix.com, vogelpix.com. And it's just kind of where it's all of the art that I've produced is generally on there. And then I have another site, which is a sales site, which is vogelfiberart.com, which is, I have a lot of fiber work and some photography, a little bit of photography. So I've got tapestries there. I've got some ankle straps, like guitar straps. And, and things like that, dog leashes. So if I've, every once in a while, you just want to make something practical. I want to make something practical. And I kind of look at it as clearing my palette.
Oh, yeah.
Something that's just a little more hands-on and doesn't require, it's not that it doesn't require thought, because it does. It's all technical, but it's a little more repetitive.
Yeah.
Like the repetitive nature of some kinds of weaving.
Thank you so much for talking to me today, Jeane.
This was so great. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was wonderful.
Yeah. I'm excited too, because you're one of the few fiber artists that I've talked to. I have actually talked to some other photographers, but they were men. We love you guys, but
we love you guys.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Art Talk with April. For more information on this episode, join the Facebook group, The Art Lounge. Please subscribe and share. See you next Tuesday. Hope you have a great week.